He just said he killed his mom night before last.
You're shitting me.
There's a body right there under those blankets.
You see it?
Under those blankets right there?
I covered her up.
He said he covered her up.
This man, in his mission to care for his ailing mother, methodically transformed their home into a tomb. It was a squalid prison where the only possible escape was death. His final act of care, after years of supposed devotion, was to end her life and then call the police to announce his work was done. The sequence of events began on January 6, 2025, with a garbled 911 call. A man named Stephen Debrowski phoned authorities in Espanola, New Mexico, attempting to confess to the murder of his mother. His words were muffled, lost in a haze of confusion, leading to a critical misunderstanding by the dispatcher. Instead of a homicide unit being sent to the location, patrol officers were dispatched for a simple wellness check. They were told to check on Stephen, with no mention of a potential victim. As the officers received authorization from their sergeant to force entry into the mobile home, they were entirely unprepared for the reality that awaited them. The door swung open not into a home, but into a scene of profound neglect and decay. The interior was a disaster zone. Every surface was buried under mountains of trash, discarded items and filth. The air was thick with a foul stench that would make even the most seasoned officers physically ill. As they navigated the treacherous landscape of clutter, they found Stephen. He was disoriented, his movements sluggish, his answers to their questions rambling and contradictory. Almost immediately he confessed, telling the officers that he had accidentally killed his mother. He claimed she had tried to hurt him, and that he simply lost control. The officers, standing amidst the overwhelming evidence of long-term squalor, found it difficult to believe that this tragedy was the result of a single, momentary lapse in judgment. The state of the home told a much longer, darker story. They pressed him for more information, asking the critical question of where his mother was. Stephen's response was simple. He directed them toward a heap of blankets in the corner of the room. It was there, beneath the pile, that the officers made their haunting discovery, confirming the muffled 911 call had been a confession after all. The wellness check had officially become a homicide investigation.
You don't want to walk? We'll carry you out.
Okay.
Let's go. You can walk, bro. Come on.
You gotta be mean.
We're not being mean. You just come on. You can walk.
I'm trying. I can't.
At least if you can get down here, they can bring you the gurney and you
I'm
can sit on the gurney.
trying.
Okay, well, take your time.
I can't by myself. I can't by myself.
Oh, move your feet.
I'm
Let's
trying.
go.
I'm trying.
With the scene secured and Stephen in custody, the true scale of the horror within the trailer began to emerge. Getting the suspect out of the house was an ordeal in itself. Stephen seemed either unwilling or unable to walk on his own, forcing officers to physically carry him out of the labyrinth of garbage he called home. Outside, under the flashing blue and red lights of the patrol cars, the grim reality of the situation began to settle in among the responding officers. They spoke in hushed, shocked tones about the conditions inside. As detectives were called to the scene, the backstory of the home's occupants came into focus. Stephen had been living in the mobile home for the past 5 years. His purpose, he claimed, was to act as the sole caregiver for his 79-year-old mother, Susan Courtney Larkin. Yet, as investigators meticulously cleared the trailer, it became painfully obvious that very little care had been given. The home was a biohazard. It was filled not just with trash, but was crawling with mice and bedbugs. Human waste was visible in multiple areas, painting a picture of extreme and prolonged neglect. Nearly every officer who entered the home that night could be heard retching from the overwhelming stench.
Oh, she under right she's there's already like bugs and shit on her.
Yeah. Bugs and everything. Okay. It's bad. Bad.
I saw it, but
The living conditions did more than just shock the officers. They cast serious doubt on Stephen's entire narrative. His claim of being a caregiver was shattered by the state of his mother's environment. Furthermore, his assertion that the murder was a spontaneous act, a momentary loss of control, seemed increasingly unlikely. The scene did not suggest a sudden snap, but rather a slow grinding descent into chaos that had been ongoing for months, if not years. The evidence suggested that Stephen had never been in control at all. His life, and his mother's, had been consumed by the filth they lived in, a physical manifestation of the psychological decay that had taken root long ago. Once Stephen was placed in the back of an ambulance to be checked by medics, a more detailed interrogation began. He was Mirandized, and he agreed to speak, his narrative weaving a confusing tapestry of love, resentment and violence. He told the investigators that he had returned to New Mexico 5 years prior, specifically to care for his mother after others had asked for his help. However, he stated that the last 6 months had become stupid and ugly. The relationship had soured completely. He then made a startling admission, revealing that his mother used to beat him severely when he was a child. This history of abuse, he claimed, had left him with post-traumatic stress disorder, a condition that haunted his adult life.
Do you suffer from any mental illness? Can you tell me what?
PTSD.
Okay. From the incidents with your mom when you were a kid?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what might have caused that?
No.
Okay.
Just but maybe my mind went back to when she used to be.
He attempted to reconstruct the night of the murder for the investigators. In his telling, he was trying to help her with routine tasks when she became verbally abusive and then physically aggressive. He claimed she kicked him, triggering a violent reaction rooted in his childhood trauma. At that moment, he explained, he blacked out. He insisted he couldn't remember the specifics of the assault. His next clear memory was of finding his mother unconscious on the floor. He said he attempted to perform CPR, but it was too late. Realizing she was dead, a wave of despair washed over him. He confessed that he then consumed a large number of pills and drank vodka in an attempt to end his own life. When he woke up, he finally called 911. Throughout the conversation, Stephen's mental state was a primary concern. He admitted to the officers that he smoked marijuana constantly, describing it as always. When a medic asked him a series of standard questions to gauge his orientation, he struggled. He didn't know the exact date, though he correctly identified the year as 2025. His answers were slow and often drifted into tangential thoughts about his mother, oscillating between expressing love for her and recounting her cruelty. He seemed genuinely perplexed by his own actions, telling the medic that he didn't understand why it happened. He was a man adrift, lost in a fog of drugs, trauma, and the horrific outcome of his final confrontation with his mother.
When she tried to physically harm me again, I slipped out. And I don't know what, I don't know what all happened. I can't tell you because I don't know.
Okay. Will you get me a chair, also, please?
I've been taking care of her for the last 5 years. And then the last 6 months, she started saying mean.
While Stephen gave his fragmented account, detectives and a medical investigator were back at the crime scene, trying to piece together a more objective version of the truth. Their goal was to determine if Stephen's story could hold up to forensic scrutiny. The timeline was one of the first things they examined. Stephen had claimed the incident occurred on Saturday night. By the time they were examining the body on Tuesday, the process of decomposition was already significantly advanced. An officer noted that the trailer was quite warm inside, even with the door having been open for hours. This heat would have accelerated the process, making Stephen's timeline plausible. The physical evidence, or lack thereof, presented a more complicated picture. The investigators saw no clear overt signs of trauma on the victim's body. There were no obvious punctures, holes, or significant bruising. This didn't rule out a violent struggle, as he could have caused her death in ways that left fewer marks, but it didn't immediately support a narrative of a frenzied attack either. They also discussed his claim of performing CPR. An officer pointed out that to do chest compressions effectively, one needs to place the person on a hard flat surface. Given Susan's size and the extreme clutter, it seemed unlikely Stephen could have moved her from a chair to the floor to properly administer aid, especially in his confessed state of panic. The entire story was riddled with inconsistencies and questions that the physical evidence could not definitively answer.
He didn't say. Saturday night.
I recall he said the
Evening. Yeah, Saturday evening, Saturday night.
Like I say, man, you know what? I would expect to see 48 hours with this much heat. This thing's probably been blasting in a trailer, so I would say even more.
The investigation inside the trailer was a monumental task. Officers described the process as trying to search through 99% garbage. The sheer volume of debris made a traditional crime scene examination nearly impossible. Amidst the chaos, they found countless prescription medication bottles, suggesting Susan had significant health issues. The entire scene was a portrait of a profoundly dysfunctional relationship, one that had festered in isolation and filth until it finally erupted in tragedy. The question was no longer just about what happened on that Saturday night, but how things had been allowed to get so bad for so long. In a surprisingly swift conclusion to the legal process, the case never went to a full trial. Just 10 days after his arrest, Stephen Debrowski met with his defense counsel and signed a plea agreement. The charge of homicide was reduced to voluntary manslaughter. This plea acknowledged that he was responsible for his mother's death, but suggested that it was not a premeditated act of murder, but rather a killing that occurred in the heat of passion or as a result of a sudden quarrel. On August 8, 2025, a New Mexico district judge handed down his sentence. Stephen was condemned to 6 years in prison, to be followed by 2 years of parole. Some might view this sentence as far too lenient for taking the life of the woman who brought him into the world. But the legal system had made its judgment. When Stephen Debrowski walks free, he will forever be shackled with the guilt of his final violent act toward his mother, a grim end to a life defined by squalor and sorrow.